If you knew me before, you wouldn't even look my way. If I had the nerve to speak, you wouldn't hear what I say. Time has come and gone so fast, we're not who we used to be.
And welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. I'm here with Dave Wentz. Dave,
Hello.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I took a peruse at a few of your YouTube showings and things like that. And I have to say, like, I like where you take your approach to music. You can tell you're writing the music based on your own personal experience. Does that
Oh,
make
thanks.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, one of the things I like to start out with is when did you start to pick up music in general? Is that something that's always been around, or?
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate to have two parents who were musicians and loved music. And my dad, he had a classical guitar. He was classically trained in Spanish Romantic music as a classical guitar player. So we grew up with classical guitars around, and I actually had no interest in it. I liked listening to him play growing up, and he had that, and he would switch between that and his Taylor acoustic, and he would, play. He'd write songs, and he was a carpenter by trade during the day. That turned into being a music teacher later in the second half of his career. But my mom loved singing. She was always singing around the house when she was, both my parents were not perfect people and they had their moments, but she did sing a lot. And, I got that from her, I think, loving to sing. And I was very shy about it, though. I mean, I didn't sing in front of people until I was, well into my late teens, but I loved singing around the house as a kid. So song was always very close to me, guitar I had no interest in until I was 12. My sister started learning guitar from my dad, and she's a year and a half older than me. And I thought, sibling rivalry, I could do it if she can do it.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with it. I played it. My dad taught me the E minor chord, and from that moment on, my world shifted. And I thought, oh gosh, I like this. You just figure out you can make sounds, and then you can sing over it. Like it clicked in a new way.
That's so awesome. Do you
Yeah.
remember like the kinds of songs you used to sing?
It was a lot of top 40, what I heard on the radio. I had this CD player that had, you could put in blank cassette tapes. And then when the top 40 song came on you would push record, and then you'd make your own mixtapes. And that was me in middle school making mixtapes that way. And you'd have to cut it off before the DJ came back on,
I know.
you know? Yeah.
That brings back so many memories.
Yeah. And then
Uh,
you have to
yep.
between every track. Yeah. But then you have a great mixtape and you have bragging rights until MP3s came along and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much cooler. But you had to work for it a little bit.
I remember like waiting because I used to do that with the rock stations, but then the songs I loved would be like the ones that would rarely play, and so I'd have to listen to like days and days and then catch that one. Like, oh, that's it.
It was a big deal.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a lot of work.
It was like catching Pokemon or something.
Yeah,
Like
I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then when you picked up a guitar, do you remember the first guitar you picked up?
Yeah. It was one of my dad's. He had a couple classical guitars. And so it was that smaller classical body with a really wide neck. And so I learned on that. And after I've been playing about a year, my dad very kindly said, this for Christmas one year, he said, okay, we're going to go to the music store. I didn't know where we were going. I thought we were just getting guitar strings. And we got there, and it's called Rosso's Music in Baltimore, where I'm from. And it was like a couple miles from our house. And we got there, and he said, okay, pick out an acoustic. Here's your budget. And I was like, what? And so it was an Alvarez, a Spanish made guitar. It's an acoustic dreadnought. And I had that for years and years, and I played, that like, every day.
I really appreciate that too because that's talk about an experience your father gave you as well, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to pick up your own guitar because I would imagine, like, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, you that gives you the ability to find the right guitar that fits your specific hands,
Yeah, and
right?
it just feels right when you pick up the right one, you play it, and it had a really warm sound, that particular guitar. And I eventually gave it away when I had several guitars. I had a friend who needed a guitar, I just gave him that one. But, it always will be very nostalgic with
Yeah.
that guitar. And my dad, again, none of us are perfect. And for all his flaws, he really instilled a love of music in us and really continues to do that. And but you know, like having that support, you know, during my teen years was really important, you know, and it really made a difference. And you also you get to know yourself, you know, I think when you learn an instrument, I feel like, because what are you drawn to? What kind of songs are you drawn to? Are you more of an instrumental person or are you more of a lyrics person? I discovered I loved lyrics and I was fascinated by lyrics and I just wanted to write lyrics to all different kinds of stuff. Mostly it was melancholic, angsty music because I was a teenager. And, you know, it was a couple years in before I realized, you know, I feel like I could write songs. Like, you know, these songs are not that complicated. Like, I was playing top 40 stuff, and, you know, you get bored just learning other people's, I did, just learning other people's songs, and you're like, yeah, I feel like I have something to say, you know, even if it's cliche teenage angsty music, like, I still want to contribute, you know? And so then you start finding your voice, and you find out, you know, things like, oh, I write way too many lyrics. I need to parse down what I'm trying to say in fewer words. How can you make the biggest impact with the fewest amount of words? And also not obsessing about it. Like there comes a point where you can self-edit, but then that gets in the way of creativity, where you're self-editing way too soon, and you're not just letting having the song happen. And, you know, a phrase would often come to me, and still does, where it might not be connected at all to what I thought I was going to write about. But then it can kind of take over, like the symbiote suit in
Yeah.
Spider-Man, but in a good way. Like that symbiote of like a new idea in the moment of inspiration suddenly can take over the whole thing, but then you realize you like it more. So sometimes that happens, right?
That's one of the things that I love about music. And I really do believe that the muse is a living, breathing thing. And you never know what shape she or he is going to take until you start making music.
Totally.
And I love that idea of like the symbiote taking over, because I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, once you get to that final product, you have this greater sense of accomplishment
hmm
after you've had a pivot like that,
hmm
right?
hmm Yeah. And you realize this thing didn't exist before. And I was honored to be the conduit that this happens. It was like the song almost doesn't belong to you. It's like kind of it happened through you and you were the one chosen for the moment for that particular song. And you know, each person who writes a song, that song couldn't have existed without you in a sense, because you're putting part of yourself into it. And like Dr. Seuss, no one's fewer than you.
Yeah,
So it's just it's kind of a nice thing, even if the song doesn't really have, you know, necessarily the destination isn't necessarily to record it and put it on Spotify, but it still has a purpose. And even if it's writing a bunch, what I call for myself, my mediocre songs, or my, you know, I wrote a lot of mediocre, not good songs, in my opinion, looking back, but I had to wade through it in order to gain skills, in order to figure out what I wanted to say, what was working, what wasn't, how do I play to my strengths, as well as what areas do I need to work on, you know. And I have a really thin skin for, you know, I've had to develop more resilience with hearing constructive feedback because, and that's a dance too, right?
yeah,
Because you can just take constructive feedback all day, and at the end of the day, are you liking what you're ultimately making, you know, or you know, or are you not open to feedback at all, and then you're just kind of uh, e- eternally inwardly turning into your own world, not looking to connect with anyone. Because I think one of the most powerful things for music for me is the potential to connect other people, you know, and connection, right? And that's music is this bridge, you know,
yeah.
between all different kinds of people. And I think it's wonderful, you
And
know.
one of the things that I love about it is if you think about it just holistically, creating a song is, in a sense, a miracle
Yeah, yeah,
because you're pulling something out of thin air and you only have how many notes on the bridge, but yet you're able to create something totally unique and specific within these minimalistic parameters. And
sure.
I appreciate so much that you're talking about the growth mindset as well, because like to anybody who thinks like they could just pick up a guitar and 3 days from now hit a number one song, like that's rare. Does it happen? I'm sure it has, but that's rare. Like it takes a lot of work
Yeah, the old
for
10,000
the
hour,
final product.
yeah, 10,000 hours, as they say. And
Yeah,
I occasionally will look back and think, you know, when I go out and I play a gig or I write a song, I'm reminded of this story about Pablo Picasso where, no, I'm saying not Pablo Picasso, but he was apparently asked by a woman to sketch something on a napkin, and he sketched something out in a minute or two. And um, she asked if she could have it, and he said that would be like $30,000. And she said, "Well, why it took you 2 minutes or something?" And he said, "No, it took me 30 years." So, it's just really interesting how people don't realize or don't stop to think until they have the personal experience in some way that draws them into the reality that it's just taken so many hours, so much effort, time, energy, and attention, sacrifice, discipline in order to grow that skill set, in order to churn out a song faster than you could a few years ago or 10 years ago, because you've done it so many times. And so really it's just like any other skill set, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, there is a level of proficiency or a level of talent that's required to get in the door.
Well, it's like, yeah, and yeah, but I think that there's this mysterious blend. Yeah. There are vocalists I hear sing and I know I can't sing what they're singing because I wasn't born with the physical vocal cords that they were born with. And while there's a lot of discipline and work that they've put into it, they also have been given a gift,
Yeah.
like biologically as well. So there's that reality too. So, I have to remember everyone has to just meet themselves where they're at and do the best with what they have. Everyone's dealt a different hand, right? Life's not fair. Absolutely. And so I'm very fortunate. I was born in a situation where we didn't have much money, but my dad had enough to give me a cheap guitar, and then I had to figure out the rest, in a sense. And like I spent my summers playing guitar, and I didn't have to work a job to help support the family like a lot of kids in high school have to do,
Yeah.
so I had that privilege,
Especially this day and age, it's happening more and more times where I know people are relying on their teenage children to sort of help fill the
supplement their
gaps.
income, sure.
Yeah.
I see that when I'm substitute teaching all the time, especially in higher need areas. Yeah.
And then in terms of like the musicality, though, do you remember like your first stage performance?
Yeah. Oh, geez. I try to forget it. I,
That's fair.
I was, senior year, I was 17, senior year of high school, and it was a large high school, it was 3,000 kids. And I remember there's a talent show for Christmas, and I was asked by my guitar teacher, Mr. Miller, great guy. He would say, okay, we're going to have people volunteer or, get ready to prepare to play for this talent show. And about 500 people would be there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do Jingle Bell Rock, and he was going to play the rhythm. I was going to play the lead guitar. And I practiced that lead guitar part so many times. And the time came for the performance, and I went up, and I never played in front of people before. And I wasn't thinking about it. And I didn't know there was such a thing called performance anxiety. And so I had that deer in the headlights moment, the freeze, when the lights really got bright and I couldn't see anybody, it was just a wall of black and me and Mr. Miller. And he starts the rhythm and I just start playing. I'd played it so many times, but I couldn't remember it. I was just hitting random notes. I was in a different key. I saw him look over, like slowly look over at me, like in a comedic, not meaning to be comedic, but looking back was comical. And he was just, you could see he knew what was going on, but the show has to go on. So he kept playing, and 2 minutes of agony that felt like a year. And then it ended. And then I got up. No one was clapping. I got up and I walked off and I just sat down and I was like, well, I'm not going to stop. I remember thinking like, I'm going to have to keep doing this. It never occurred to me to not do it again. That's how I knew I loved it. I knew I was like, I'm just going to have to get better at it, but I felt so much shame too. Yeah.
And to be on stage requires a lot of resilience, I think,
You have
almost.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's stand-up comedy or a song or a poem. Yeah. Performance art. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny to me, like, and I've said this before in this podcast, but how you put everything together for a set the night before, don't touch anything, come in the next day, and all the electrical's messed up.
Mm,
And
yeah.
like that's just inevitable with a live performance where amps go out, guitar strings break,
I've had all these things happen.
and you just gotta roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do when a string breaks?
Well, I think you have to learn to laugh, and try to figure out, okay, make the best of it, and you're not going to stop the show. you're just gonna have to be, and she also later you can think about, okay, do I want to change what kind of pick I'm using? Do I want to change the strings, go to a higher gauge or like a thicker gauge?
But doesn't that change the sound in a way?
It does somewhat, yeah, but I mean, what do you value more? It's like, do you want the security of less likelihood of a broken string, or do you want just that? I think there can be a thing like a tone obsession that some musicians get into, especially guitarists are susceptible to it, I think, where tone is important. Like I have my specific guitar for a reason. I have my amp, my pedal board combo all for a reason. But there's also the reality that can you focus? I'm more of a fan of focusing on the musicality of the music. Do these chords have a nice color to them? Is it supporting the melody? Is it lending itself to creating a good melody woven throughout it? And I remember, sidebar to that, I remember thinking of chords very one-dimensionally until in college. I was a jazz major in college. I remember my guitar teacher, Tim Jenkins, amazing composer, a jazz composer. He said, you never forget the melody is inside the chords. You just have to find it. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're right. It's all right there. It's just right there in front of me, you know.
And so, in practical matters, for some people listening who may not understand what that means entirely,
Yeah.
can you help explain a little bit what you mean when you're saying that melody is in the chords?
Well, melodies and chords are, in basic music theory, they're made up of all the same kind of pieces. But you could think of, single note melodies or scales, single notes as, deconstructed chords, sort of, or,
Okay.
pieces. So, and chords are specific notes in that scale of that modality or that key that stack a certain way in order to create. Like a G major chord would be the notes G, B, D. You learn how to spell. If you can spell chords out in notes, then you can, understand the theory on how it relates on the instrument. But I got really interested in jazz guitar voicings, which is adding on certain suspensions or colorful notes onto a chord that normally aren't in the triad version, the simple version of the chord. A lot of triad chords are things you find in pop music,
Yeah.
like GCD, that kind of thing. And those are, useful in a functional way, but they're limiting in the sense that your melody, you don't have as many excuses to paint a little outside the lines with the colors of the melody if your chords only allow certain colors, you know?
So if you're looking at it like a color wheel
Yeah, like
scale,
colors.
like red and blue are always going to make
Red, blue,
green.
yellow, the primaries are
Yeah.
always going to be there.
Yeah.
But then what about your secondaries and your complementary
And
and
you
then all the
can't get to pink
shades?
without red.
Yeah, you have to blend things and you have to take other notes and tack them on just to experiment. You have to be willing to, like, what does it look like? I'm getting into painting as of last year too. I'm like, you have to be curious, like, what it would look like if I threw this color in with that. What will we get? And would I want to use that? And you do that with chords. That's what I do. And
And then match that up with your vocals.
yeah, and you get starting in a key that you can sing in or that's in your range, because I've made that mistake. And so I have no shame with using a capo, like moving it around and trying to find I'm looking for, again, I'm kind of looking for tone. I'm looking for the color. Like, where's the mood? Where is it today? Is it in these chords? No. It's almost like a hide and seek game where you're kind of like playfully in a low pressure way, just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to play these kind of shapes, and then, oh, look at this chord book. And sometimes it's looking through a chord book on a guitar chord in a book
Yeah.
of guitar chords and being like, I've never seen that shape before. I'm gonna try to play it, move it around, pick up my finger. How's that sound? Just little experiments to see, oh, whoa, I hear a melody now. And then that's how so many of my songs have started.
I love that. And then in terms of like the stage performance, do you normally go with like a set list or just an idea of some of the songs you're going to sing? Or
I used to be really into just having a very organized, formal, like uniform set list. There's some of that still exists in my approach, but now I just have a bunch of songs, and the band has a bunch of songs, whether it's a duo, me a solo show, or the band, Tigers of Youth. We have songs that we all have practiced and we know originals, and then and some few covers, and then we just kind of go by feel and think of like, okay, who's here? This particular chemistry of an audience. What are they responding well to? Let's lean in that direction more. So it's a little more organic in the moment, hopefully fostering, engagement from the audience, you know, and so there has to be some flexibility, I think, with being in a band and like performing, and for me at least.
Yeah, because you never know what you're going to get until you get on stage,
No,
and no two audiences are the same.
nope.
Yeah, and I like that how I would imagine it lends to much better performances if you have the flexibility to sort of lean into what the crowd is feeling.
Yeah, because then that makes the experience better for everyone, and then makes it more memorable for everyone. And also the tip jar gets a little fuller, which is nice. If you know, we always put the tip jar out. One of my favorite tip jar signs I saw was something like had a ninja on it, and it said, "Family kidnapped by ninjas need money for karate lessons." I thought that was so good. I copied it for a while. I had it on the tip jar. Um, but yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, performance. What is a big subject, right? It's like the psychology of it, the emotionality of it. You know, the songs that you pick. Are you feeling that song? Like, there's times when there's a song on the set list, and I'm looking at it right after we finish our last song, and I'm like, my gut feeling's like, I'm not feeling that one. And I look over, and it's like, would you all be okay with doing like this other one? And you know, they're great. They're like usually like, yeah, sure. Or they'll have a gut feeling and be like, it's feeling kind of like low energy. Let's pick it up some,
Yeah,
you know, or play a really upbeat one. Okay, let's slow it down some, you know, let's get romantic for a second. Okay, let's get energetic, you know. So it's just kind of, we have this open dialogue. I think friendship has to be the main foundation for a good band, because you can throw a rock out a window and hit a good musician sometimes, especially guitar players. They're probably also kind of a diva, like I can be or I have been. And I've had to really, I think, playing in a band is an ongoing lesson of letting go, because I have this inner control freak that wants to think that my vision is most important, or that my way of seeing a song, or the version that I wrote of the song I bring to the band is like the version, and there can't be any feedback. There can't be, and that's black and white. That's very rigid and dualistic, and I'm trying to live less in that space as a person as well as creatively. And so it stretches you and it's uncomfortable. It puts sand in the gears, but you also tend to grow more, and you again, eh, not getting so tightly not hold so tightly onto a specific outcome, right?
yeah.
And this philosophically for me too. And so it's a task, right? So challenging, and it's never been easy for me, but it's always led to more expansive uh, things, you know.
And I just had a nice conversation about that the other day, because I do think it's really important how the band works together, more so than just individual talent.
There has
And
to be a
so,
synergy.
yeah. And so, how do you sort of like? Because one of the things I love is when you see a band on stage, and you notice, like I noticed a nod, or I'll notice a little hidden point, and then you can see the whole band shift. Like, does that something that sort of happens in practice organically, or is that something that just sort of happens organically on stage and you pick up over time together?
It could just be people getting used to each other, and the verbal and nonverbal communication, vibes, reading body language. You know, my day job for the past 8 years has been in special ed, and that is so much based around rapport building, nonverbal cues, um, you know, trying to find a way to communicate with each different person differently, and making that a priority. And I feel like we all are so complex as people, and yet we all need love and acceptance. We all need some of the basic same things, right? But we all go about it trying to find it, a lot of times, all of us in maladaptive ways, in different ways. So we're going to rub each other the wrong way. Um, but yeah, so I think that for me, it's also about like, how are your communication and your interpersonal skills? Can you work on being gently direct, and
Yeah,
seeing that as a part of being honest? And because I've spent so many years trying not to um, ruffle any feathers. And you know, like I remember in Justice St. Clair's interview, Justice was saying that, yeah, this time in the band, I'd refrain from saying much feedback because I'm not a bass player. So like I can't like direct you in a better direction unless I have a very simple idea I want you to do, you know. But I really wanted each member, and I still do, to feel like they have space to be themselves creatively, and not, now it has to serve the song, right? in the sense of like, can we all agree this is or is not serving the song, or is it becoming too much about any one of us? And I do believe that, like, it's tricky because the band is sort of like a jazz fusion rock pop group with singer-songwriter sensibilities. So the singer-songwriter element's at the core, but then you have jazz right outside that core circling, saying, hey, this is a democracy. Hey, this is a democracy. And the singer-songwriter ego is like, but this is my song, right?
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
that's a tension that is always kind of been there when it comes to doing things like, okay, we're gonna play this version of the song live, we're gonna trade solos, unlike the recorded version. But we all have to, again, we all have to feel like we want to be there. We're experiencing a flow, joy, you know, because I believe, to quote an author, Justin McRoberts, I have this quote on my wall. He said, joy is the best metric for success.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. And it's hard because, the music business would say, well, no, it's how many streams you have. It's how much money you've made. And that's tricky because it's easier to quantify a bank account number. Oh, like, oh yeah, look at that deposit we got from such and such streaming service because of how many streams we got. And it's kind of it's validating, but it's temporary. And then, you're hungry for the next thing and you realize, oh, that wasn't enough, was it? And what is enough? And what did Rockefeller say? They asked him how much is enough money, and he said
Never enough.
just a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. And so that makes me laugh sadly when I hear that. But music, it has art and business together are strange bedfellows. But this is the place we find ourselves. And what do we do with it? I think it's so easy to complain about things. And like, I'm an idealist. I'm one of the most idealistic people I know. That's why one of the reasons I'm still stubborn about doing creativity and making music a priority, and it's cost me relationships, it's cost me friendships, it's cost me the ability to get everyone in my family a nice Christmas gift because I'm like not making much money. It has a cost. And so it's like, at the end of the day, again, if you're looking for like a relationship, like a partnership, which these days still am, but you still have to be accepted for who you are.
Yeah.
And not be told that you're not good enough in some way because you're doing something you love.
And I hate that because like the voices that say that you're not good enough, more often than not, don't really know what the hell they're talking about.
And they may not like themselves very much.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because like anybody that comes down, like I have a theory that there's no such thing as bad music, only music that you like or music you may not like. I really don't think there's such thing as terrible music. And so anybody that goes on social media or trolls around and tells a musician that their music is terrible, they're a lousy human being. I'm sorry. Like that should not just like, then don't listen. Listen to whatever floats your boat. But yeah, I hate trolls, and it just drives me nuts.
It's understandable, and there's so much negative energy on the internet, and so much advice on the internet. And I think that there is, hey, I'll take good advice a lot, and I've given advice probably too often, but I believe that generally people mean well when they give advice, even if it comes across as unkind. But I feel like, so apparently there's this quote in Alcoholics Anonymous, something like there's a saying, unsolicited feedback and unsolicited advice is criticism.
Yeah.
And I thought, oof,
Yeah.
that hit me. Yeah. And I needed to remember it for myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm so ready to recommend a book to somebody. Or, I mean, book recommendations. I mean, I don't know if that's advice, but you could say, advice so easily and say, hey, I really think you should do this. And it could be even really practical and helpful. But again, it carries with it presumptions. And
I liken it as though something called the writing reflex. Like our reflex is to suggest and improve and criticize, and to resist the writing reflex and say, how about I ask first before I give advice?
That's a great idea.
And just pause for a moment and say, do you need advice or do you just want to vent?
You just want me to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if people could start with that,
Yeah.
so many more relationships would be on solid ground.
Mm,
Because, like, more often than not, we just want to vent, and we've probably already tried the 95% of the things that you're going to suggest,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're sitting with a guitar. It's like, well, I'm not going to try this. And no, you've tried everything that you possibly know. And so I always pause and say, let me ask if they want advice first, because that way I know, one, they're open to receiving feedback at this moment in time, but two, it also lets them know that your intent is to provide feedback and not just criticize.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great rule of thumb. And how many times have either of us received advice and we thought,
I'm
did,
guilty of it too.
yeah, or received advice and we thought, this makes me feel like they think I'm stupid,
Yeah.
or like, or like or really just not as helpful as the person would think it would be, or maybe it really helped them, but it doesn't apply to us in a sense, in our own perception of it. But yeah, so yeah, I
Yeah. So to go back to the music piece, though, so you're sort of like in the solo career and sort of having the solo path, and then you sort of, how did you jump into like the band life?
well, I started playing. It was me and my brother years ago, playing when I was like 18, 19. We started playing like local little festivals, like really small local stuff. And then I started playing more, and me and my brother played in a group I started called Blind Man Leading out in Baltimore.
That's a cool name.
And thanks. Yeah, I like that name. But unfortunately later it kind of became tainted with other members that came along and kind of, ruined it for me. So I had to change the name. But I was always writing, or came out with a few albums that are, Spotify under Blind Man Leading. But, you know, um, some good memories, definitely. A lot of growth in that band,
Yeah.
writing, figuring out more so what I wanted to write about and what style I wanted to write in, and just exploring a lot of guitar driven stuff, singer songwriter, pop rock. And then I moved out here in 2015 in August, and I just wanted to start something different. And then I love tigers. It's my favorite animal. So, I thought, well, Tigers of Youth sounds a little different. It didn't sound like something that was already taken. So I was like, can't think of anything else. So I'll just say that, and ended up meeting a guy named John Mintz, who was the first bass player in the band, and that the next year, and we started playing shows in 2016, and we had a drummer. Drummer didn't work out for very legitimate reasons, but everyone else has left the band. Pretty good terms were parted in general, and very thankful for that. And I got to play with a lot of good people, and people would come and go. There's probably been 16 bandmates of Tigers of Youth since 2016.
Okay.
So a fair amount of people, and people just come and go, and um, they put their own kind of flavor on the band while they're in the band, and uh, you know, I ended up having these guys that I'm playing with now for the past 2.5 years, and it's been really, really something I'm very grateful for, and they really brought more of the jazz energy, the horn, the horn energy, which is great. And, Sean is great at, being, Sean is a horn player. He's really great at kind of listening to a song and thinking, okay, what else could go in here? Like a counter melody, and I love that idea. And it's been fun to come up with melodies for him to play, as well as, hear his ideas for counter melodies, and maybe try to play around with some of my ideas and see what sticks, throw it to the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah.
And then Philip, the drummer, he's been doing a great job just, you know, holding down the rhythm section. And, he's grown so much too and playing with us, which is so cool. Um, yeah, so we're a trio right now. Our bass player had to leave last year for personal family reasons, and so he had to take care of stuff. So great guy, though. Just had coffee with him the other day, and catching up. And yeah, so it's just been being flexible. So much of, I think, being a musician for me has been, how flexible are you? Can you bend this way? Can you be like Gumby? Can you keep bending? And now, do you need to kind of take a little step back, play fewer shows this month, and then come back to it a little more ready, and are you writing songs and sharing songs and making music that you're excited about, that you want to go into the studio and track, and I know my favorite songs that I've written are the ones I'm so excited to go in and track, and the studio is one of my favorite places,
What is it about the studio that you love the most?
It's seeing the final step of evolution happen for a song. It's getting all your ideas down, all the ideas, and then the band doing their parts, hearing it all just so crisp and nice and clean, and then having a good friend of mine, Christian Brown, who's a wonderful producer and musician, a great songwriter. He will, I'll ask him some version of what do you think? What do you think could be changed or added, or do you have any ideas? Are you inspired at this moment at any point? And he's really good at hearing possibilities and saying, what about this? And sometimes it's too left field for me, but other times it's just right. And I'll think, yes, that really bumped the song up a notch. And I'm just so, I'm so grateful for that. So I think that for me, it's so easy in a world where, again, music is worshipped, but it's not valued in the sense of like the arts in general.
Yeah.
With like the quote we were talking about earlier about Ethan Hawke saying in an interview something to the amount of, we don't value the arts until we're at like a funeral of a loved one and we need a song or a poem to show how we feel because words aren't enough. And I think that for me, I wrote a lot of these songs out of moments of needing a happy song because life was bleak, or needing a sad song because my heart was broken, whatever it is. I've written a lot of songs. I was singing this in the car on the way to work the other day. I said, I was thinking to myself, I've written a lot of songs out of a place of desire, like the wanting the thing that's over there in some way, wanting to see something happen in life, wanting a relationship, wanting, could be a particular person, could be an idea, or melancholic, disappointment sometimes,
Yeah.
like I think that the idealist in me is confronted with disappointment a lot. So what do you do with that? How do you process that disappointment, that burnout, when you're a creative, and I think so much of it for me has come back to the spirituality, like the joy levels, the remembering the why, the purpose for you, and what are the most indispensable important things, and I think for me, making art, whether it's painting some or it's music, it has to come from a place of inner alignment, feeling like you're being an unblocked channel for whatever's happening. And yeah, that's your job. So,
And I think you have to have that in order for it to qualify as self-care.
yeah.
Because if you're doing something that is not in tune with what you've got or with you as a person, that's when I think it's work.
Mm.
And for me, anything I can do that drains me is work. So like with this podcast, this doesn't drain me. This actually fills my cup because I love hearing other people's stories. At the same time, some of these conversations that we have, when they go into directions that were totally not expected, they can be draining. And you just kind of have to open yourself up to sort of the ride, if you will.
Yeah. And I was reading something recently about the difference between judgment and discernment. And judgment has a negative charge to it.
Yeah.
A negative emotional charge to it. But discernment is about more values based, where it's like, well, that's important to you. And I respect that. This is important to me. So discerning between these two things, that's some of the differences between you and me. And it's okay. So,
I like that because that leaves room for them to exist at the same time.
And there's no wrong right way there.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, that's like right for you. Or that's like your values. So you value this a lot and I value this a lot. And those values are different, but that doesn't mean that there's a bad and a good person here.
And I appreciate that because we're kind of stuck in this loop of duality where it's like yes or no, or like good or bad. But in the reality, if you take a step back, like we're all human. We are all in the gray. We're all in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
And
it's a spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like one of the things that I appreciate about the discernment piece is it leaves room for both people to have their own views of what's important to them without removing the importance from that other person.
Right. Yeah. And, I heard somewhere once that judgmentalism is instinctive because it's been used by our ancestors as a survival mechanism. Like, because it's like either there's a tiger in the bushes or there's not. We have to know. So it's like the light switch can't be halfway. It has to either on or it's off. It's a need for closure, right?
Yeah.
It kept our ancestors alive. So it's natural that it's deep down in us. It's like we shouldn't hate ourselves because we're judgmentally minded, or in some ways.
There's a quote, and they're gonna kill my friends are gonna kill me for not knowing the woman behind the quote, but she's like, we have built up this really robust defense system in our brain when we encounter a bear in the woods. But what do we do if we're not in the woods and there's no bear? Our brains are still wired to act as if there's a bear.
Yeah.
And
If someone says they don't like our shirt or something, it's like, whoa, and
Yeah.
then we react, in a similar way. And I'm trying to think of like some other notes I made to make sure oh yeah. So like, I think thinking about, I'm a doer. And so in the sense of like, I tend to overwork and overgive.
Yeah.
And I think for me, burnout's been connected to that. And I think part of recovery for me has been honoring rest in my life and not just seeing it as naps or getting enough sleep. Because sleep, I was reading this book called Sacred Rest. It was really good. And the author was a doctor who a medicinal doctor, she noticed that she was having a lot of clients come in who were chronically exhausted. And she was like, we actually have a cultural problem. She's like, I believe over like 20 years of her practice, she wrote this book. And one of the things she talks about, she says, sleep is not rest. That's a bodily need. She's like, naps, that's not really rest exactly. That's, those can be very important too. But she said there's like different kinds of rest. There's sensory rest, there's emotional rest, there's spiritual rest, there's physical rest, there's social rest, there's creative rest, and she kind of goes into the book describing each kind and what to look for, but she says this thing, she says, the idea that we should make sure we're staying connected with others because we're not going to really have much good fruit in our lives if we're not staying connected to others, And I was like, oh, that's great. She said, and that can be part of the whole picture is what does the connectivity in our lives look like? And, are you getting those needs met?
Well, it's huge because, like, I know, like, as somebody who's on the autism spectrum myself, like, I know a lot of people who are also on the spectrum who live very isolated lives. And the biggest desire for them is human connection in some form. But there's a limiting factor because of the disability, because of whatever, that keeps them socially isolated. And I can't agree with you more because, like, when I started this podcast and I started venturing out and making human connections and making friends and doing things that I haven't in quite some time, I have a full life for the first time in a really long time.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Because you're right, absolutely right. Like, that connection is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring that up, and it kind of ties to music, is because one of the things that I love about the music scene here in Salem and Portland in particular is that musicians seem to have that connection with each other and be supportive. Has that been your sort of experience as well?
I think that because human beings are a mixed bag, I'd have to give a mixed bag answer.
That's fair.
I feel like I've met some really cool people and people you just want to hang out with and have a good time and just, not have to just kind of hang out. And, and this is the same, any music scene I've been a part of. I've been in the Chicago music scene. I've been in the Baltimore music scene, the DC music scene a little bit, a little bit in the Seattle music scene, Portland music scene, Salem music scene, and a little bit in the Eugene music scene. And so the patterns I notice in all these places is people are either kind and they want to connect, or they're insincere, or they're somewhere in between, and I think that competition makes it strange.
Yeah.
So many times because, and I have to be careful that own propensity within me to like not give into that current because it's like it unconsciously kind of sucks you in if you're not careful. And I actually said something about this, about competition. Yeah. So like just the idea that you can try to work really hard to try to get some kind of outcome you want. They control these factors, and then, the algorithm says that if you follow these steps and then you pay for these ads or you do this, then you'll get on these playlists, and then that will do this, and then you'll be better than other people, or it better, right? And so there's this narrative that's so easy to kind of buy into, the hype or the whatever it is, fill in the blank. And we get these ideas that somehow, because we have more or less streams than someone, in the case of music streaming, somehow what we're doing is more or less valid, and then we start, comparison being a thief of joy. So if I'm guarding my joy levels, bringing it back to joy, like if comparison is a thief of joy, right?
Yeah.
I do believe that. And if I'm trying to guard my joy, then me buying into the comparison game is not going to serve me or anybody else. And that's easier said than done. But I feel like if I can be satisfied creatively with what I'm doing, and, hopefully other people are connecting with it, that's a big part too, as far as wanting other people to enjoy what you're doing. It's like a foot in each world. I feel like I've met people who were very concerned about the comparison game and seem to be fueled many oftentimes by their own insecurities or by their sense of inadequacy or them trying to prove themselves through what they were doing. And you see it in the corporate world, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just music, it's everywhere. And it's so easy to buy into that dynamic. And I just I feel like there's more disconnection resulting from that. And like I think in general it can be so easy for us creatives to be, I'm guilty of course, wrapped up in our own worlds and not stop. And you're creating a space for stopping and noticing and connecting people, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish there were more things like this. So the music scene has always been strange in that regard. I can't judge it. It's just, I'm always refreshed when I find, people like you and musicians who I have a genuine connection with. It doesn't even have to be a great friendship. Just like, hey, like we get along. We see each other,
Yeah.
and that's really meaningful to me. And so, I've had to stop coming to expect it. And I think that isolationism in our culture is just, yeah, it's rampant. So, again, I'm trying to keep in front view for me the why, which for music, which is for me, fostering connection, fostering hopefully something meaningful. People can feel deep in their chest or something. Yeah.
And that's such a huge component, like, and I've said this ad nauseum on this podcast. I'm sorry for repeating myself, but because of my autism, one of the hardest things I have is to convey emotion or express what I'm feeling when I'm going through things of like high emotional stress.
Mm,
But there's a song for it.
sure.
And anytime I can attach myself to a song that says a meaning or has a story, or like, for example, that I was listening to Courage to Change by Sia, which is my anthem.
Wow.
Like, world, I want to, I don't know, I forget the words, but basically in essence, it's, uh, I want my life to matter. I want this world to be a better place. Do I have the courage to change, to become a better person, to fill what this world needs?
Mm,
And it wasn't until I heard that song that was like it captured exactly sort of like what I'm trying to accomplish.
mm,
And if it wasn't for music, I don't know where I would be in life, because I have that emotional attachment to certain songs that have gotten me through the darkest times, that have gotten me through the happiest times. And knowing that if I'm having a really bad day, I can vibe to this band, or if I'm having a really good day, I can pull on, you know, some today I'm not doing anything, like Bruno Mars. And it just depends. And it's really one
mm.
of the things I love most about music is,
So versatile.
yeah. But
Yeah.
like when you have an artist such as yourself that taps into this personal connection and creates lyrics that actually have a meaning or have like this goal and it's weaved into the fabric of the song,
Try to.
you can tell.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, you can
Glad to hear
tell. And I really appreciate that you do that with your art,
Thank you.
because I think like when you're talking about top 40, like when sort of like when we're talking about when we started, a lot of those songs are just kind of pop songs that have very little or no meaning.
Hmm.
Like dance songs have their place, but I want the gritty, real conversation piece music
Something
that
about life.
has something about life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's certain songs I'll just keep coming back to from different artists. And there's a song, one of those songs by a band called Susto, which is like a North Carolina band. Do you know Susto?
I've heard, yeah,
Yeah, Susto. Do you know any Susto songs?
not by name.
Okay, so there's a bunch of them, but one of them is called Hard Drugs, and it's so good. And it starts off just, really kind of dark, but then it goes into, just reflecting on how life's tough, but I know that you've had a hard time too, is one of the lines, and so it's just the solidarity of like, hey, life can be hard, right? Like even if it's just sitting next to someone like, life, huh? And they're like, yeah, you said it, like, and that's just that song that's the vibe a little bit, and yet also, yeah, just like there are songs where if you listen to them all the time, you'd be pretty depressed. But there are times when it's just the right flavor. It's
Yeah.
just the right blend of emotions and words, and you're right. There's something that it stirs up in you, and when I get that feeling when I'm writing a song, I'm like, oh, I gotta finish this one, whatever happens, you know.
Do you like keep a journal or like a recorder, or how do you capture that
You
when
know,
it
it's
comes to you in the middle of
it's
the night?
varied over the years. It used to be this recorder, just like click record and then try to hope I remember the chord shapes I was doing. Nowadays, I love the visual element, so I'll just have my phone and I'll make a video of me playing with. You can see my hand, the chords,
Yeah.
and me singing, so you can hear the melody. And that way, I have little snippets, and then I'll, kind of like put them into a separate folder in my phone, like song ideas, and then I'll go back through that and then, okay, what's that? Oh, that idea, right? And then I'll get the embryos down that way, and then they'll evolve later as I have the discipline to sit down, and like I'm doing that right now. Like I have maybe 40 or 50 little embryo ideas that I need to see if they go anywhere,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And do you start with like a melody and a mood and then do lyrics, or do sometimes lyrics come first and they're like, oh, I got to capture a melody that fits these lyrics?
I used to write a lot more lyrics first. So much I would write lyrics and be like, now I have to write a melody that fits all these lyrics, and I can't cut out any of the lyrics because then it would not be the original version, and I would get overly rigid, right? So, um, I found that was kind of labor intensive. So, and I would overthink it and stress out. So I realized for me, first melody and chords and mood and feel and emotion before kind of asking myself, what is this song evoking? What is what is the feel? What is this song about? And pairing that oomph feeling toward a direction with, okay, maybe a more specific fine-tuned topic over here, and then kind of see if they'll merge. And generally I try to say, well, I do enjoy a cheerful melody with sad lyrics for some reason, like that paradox. I do enjoy that. So I find myself sometimes doing that. Then there's always the sad music with the sad lyrics, as expected. And then you have, the I don't write a whole lot of cheerful song. I do write some. Lately, I've been writing more cheerful Caribbean rhythm influenced kind of pop rock jazz tunes with more upbeat lyrics, maybe like love, but it comes from a sincere place. Like I don't want to write songs because it's time I should write this kind of song. I don't want to get caught in that, getting haunted by the ghosts of should have, right? As Scott Erickson, a favorite author of mine, says, he says, don't get haunted by the ghosts of should have. I'm like, oh, that's good. Don't live in regret.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I really enjoy a variety of sounds. And that's why if you listen to my discography, you'll hear every album feels kind of different.
A little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes dramatically different. If you pair one track and you put another one right after it, it's like harder rock next to jazz. It's sort of like that's the spectrum.
And do most of your albums have like a theory woven in between, or are they sort of like just I love these songs together?
Seasons where I would write a period of time where I'd write songs in a window of time, and then I'd try to pick out the ones that seemed like they could go together. And instead of, I've never been great at the idea of like a concept album. I'm fascinated by that, but I
Yeah,
could never do it, or at least not yet. And so I just have kind of like ideas here, here, here that I kind of start grouping together and being like, yeah, these songs I could see kind of in an album. And then the producer kind of helps stitch things together a little more with the sound, the sonic production, and the first album was very much more polished pop rock. And then So Bright for So Long was more singer-songwriter kind of focused.
yeah.
And then the third was a little more groovy bass lines and a little more kind of groovy, a little more jazzy, fusiony pop rock. And then we've continued with the next iteration of singles that we have kind of leans in that direction even more. Um, yeah, with more drum breaks, more horn solos with a guitar solo or a bass solo, you know. Um, yeah, so it's just been an evolution.
And what's next? Because we've been at this for an hour already.
Have we?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, so I've been writing more songs in Spanish.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have more and more friends who are bilingual slash maybe only speak Spanish, and so I'm a part of Las Naciones Methodist Church, which is right downtown, and it's I'm the only gringo there, so it's been a great opportunity to learn Spanish and make some great friends, and they're so warm there, friendly, and they help me with my Spanish, and so I've been writing some in Spanish, and about 20% of the songs now are either bilingual or Spanish, and one of them released on Spotify last month called Bajo las Luces, which means under the lights, romantic slow dance song with lots of horns and pretty melodies. And I really like that. We have an instrumental coming out, a single on Spotify and all streaming platforms called Hollywood Cops, which is meant to be like an instrumental introductory music to like a 80s buddies cop show. Really, kind of embraces its own fun cheesiness,
Yeah.
with the horns and, groovy guitar and so I've been painting some of the artwork to the Spotify singles now and then scanning it and then, we'll use that. So I just finished one that's Hollywood Cops kind of idea.
I love that.
Miami sunset with two guys with shades and like in front
Yeah.
of a car, with like a helicopter behind. And that's hanging in my kitchen right now.
Oh, that's
But I'm
awesome.
gonna scan it and it'll be the artwork hopefully. So yeah, just playing shows. We can find us like if people were to want to find us tigersofyouth.com or on our Spotify, we have all the shows listed. Mostly Willamette Valley stuff, between Salem, Silverton, Eugene. Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things I always like to talk to artists about is like after the show, because a lot of people kind of, even with local acts, get a little intimidated about possibly going up and saying hi.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I don't think you're that kind of person. So I just want to throw
Yeah.
that out there that it,
Yeah.
what do you want people to do after a show?
Oh, come say hi. Like so many people feel weird about it. It's true. Like the thing is like I have to pack up all the stuff because I'm the roadie too. So like I'm like packing up chords and probably people are just being thoughtful and not
Yeah.
saying like, oh, I don't want to bother him, But whenever people come up and chat, like I'll chat. Yeah, sure. Like it's nice, like I have really nice people say, we get thankfully a lot of compliments of that. I like the music and that means a lot. Means people are listening, and yeah, we just always appreciate connecting with people and, when people buy t-shirts, that means so much or they want a CD for a coaster, whatever, we give out free stickers, it's like, here's a free sticker, put it on your neighbor's car, but not really, but something that's, a nice way to, just connect with people,
And one of the things that I want to stress to people too is just how important it is to support local music.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I know Swifties, go see your Taylor Swift concert. Also, in the meantime, check out 10 or 15 local bands at
Yeah.
like $5 a piece.
Totally.
Like you
Yeah.
will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why is it so important to you that people support local musicians?
That's a great question. I'd say it keeps the local music alive, because if we played show after show and no one was there, I would get discouraged. I would get really discouraged, and I would think, okay, well, I'm trying to make music to connect people, but if people aren't showing up in these spaces, then what am I doing? You know, and I mean, you can always, of course, there is meaning for me also in recording music and putting it online so people can listen to it throughout the world. And it's cool to see on your apps where people are streaming and like, wow, people in Turkey are really liking this song. Pretty random, right? So that's really cool. But there's something special about a local music scene and the real life moments, the moments you're creating together, you know, the energy exchange between the audience and the performers. It's symbiotic. There's no, in a sense, there are moments when there's no you and us. It's like, it's you and
It's all
me.
us.
It's all us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like, you can sense even, I've come over the years to believe that I can sense when there's a certain area of a room, especially if it's a room where there are people engaging and listening. Like there's like this more connection over here. So I'm also kind of unconsciously starting to play to those people more. And, you know, or if it starts happening over there, you know, so it's amazing. Like just you sense people's attunement sometimes.
And I think that makes for much better music.
Yeah, because then you try harder. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it encourages you, inspires you to show up and do as good a job as you can for them. You know, yeah.
And I'll close this podcast the way I close all the podcasts, folks. Be kind. Like, treat people with respect, and this place would be a much better planet. How can people go? You said you kind of mentioned your website, but just for the record, website and where people can go to find out where you're at.
Yeah, tigersofyouth.com. You have a tour. There's like a tour link you can click on, like a tab, and it'll show you shows. You can find us on social media, Instagram, Spotify. We have a TikTok, but we're not on there too much. It's just me playing riffs. That's kind of what it is. And just I come up with an idea. I'm like, oh, that's fun, and then I'll, you know, sometimes upload it. But yeah, mostly some YouTube. YouTube hasn't been updated in a while, but there's some music videos on YouTube. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.